now time to begin our work session for the North Kingstown School Committee. If everyone could please rise and sing the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Garden.
Here.
Larry Sweet.
Here.
Joe Hawkins. Here. Michael Jones.
Here.
Linda Munch.
Here.
Lee Peach.
Here.
Liz Stacy.
Join us if you pull the calendars, please.
March 18th, submission of town manager's proposed budget for town council and review by the department. School department portion, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. March 19th, cleanup meeting, Central Administration Building. March 20th, school committee business meeting, 7 p.m. Washington High School. March 25th, closed committee meeting, 3:30 p.m. Central Administration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have 3 students here tonight to congratulate on their state championship. So we're going to go down and present those. The rest of you can do those, go down and shake hands. You're very welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. Am I being projecting? Okay. It's a really good time of year. It always seems this time of year we do exceptionally well, it seems, with the winter sports. And so there are a number of things to report tonight, not only but a few other things. But, this first award tonight is for Maria Bolabrook in honor of her outstanding achievement of winning the state championship in the indoor track for 55 meter. Maria, this is not the first time you've done this. Congratulations, that's wonderful. And Mike Toulon, are you here? Come on up, Mike. In honor of the outstanding achievement of winning the state championship in swimming for the 100-yard butterfly and the 500-yard freestyle. And this other one is another track award in honor. This is for Zach Emmerich. In honor of your outstanding achievement of winning the state championship in indoor track, 300 meter and 600 meter. This is your first time, Zach? Won last year as well.
Yes, as Mr. Jones reminded me, we'll have to have our state spelling bee champion come back again this year. Susan Landry, one for the second time, although he probably shouldn't be spelling her name.
He did a good job last time. That was, as long as we're doing some quick presentations, we would like to get Stephen Landry back. Stephen is the student who last year won the Rhode Island Scripps Spelling Bee. Well, guess what? He did it again. He's now a 6th grader at Wakefield Middle School, and he is a 2-time winner of the state spelling bee. So congratulations to him. Also, congratulations to the theater Thespians of North Kingstown. They put together an outstanding performance this weekend. It was just a delight to see it, and what made it so great was just so many people being involved. There had to be over 100 kids ultimately involved. That whole area in front of the stage was full of musicians. The stage was full of actors and dancers and singers, and it was just a tremendous event. Congratulations to Norma Piazza, Linda Haggard, Bob Schaefer, Mike Ayatollah, the 4 adults. I'm sure there are many, many other adults, a lot of parents as well, to help organize such an event. But the music band was a real triumph, and it's a wonderful event. Also, this was the weekend that our boys basketball team went to the finals, and although they didn't win, another exceptional year for them. They're not done yet. The state tournament still to come. So, with weekends like that, when you get all of these kinds of things coming together, where you realize how good a school system we have and how high achieving we are in so many ways, and which is an excellent segue to Dr. Humbird tonight. He's going to talk about how high achieving our students are academically. But before she begins, I would like to just mention, I've been here now for 5 years as assistant superintendent, and it's remarkable to me to see the level of commitment on behalf of the staff of this district. Our principals, our teachers, our support staff, our parents, and our students, especially our students, working very hard, very focused on what they need to do, and we as a district have been, cited by Commissioner Gist as one of only 6 in the state that have significant increases in student achievement as measured by the NECAP test scores for the past 5 years. And, that's a big deal. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily the highest in every category, although we are amongst the highest in just about every category. But it does mean that we've made the most growth in that time. And that takes a concerted and focused effort, people really coming together. And I couldn't be more proud of the achievement of our staff and our students and the whole community coming together, parents, to make this happen. So for the details on that, I will pass that on to
Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? So this is the last time that we will be having the results of the NECAP for reading and math. We will be continuing with the NECAP testing for science, but not so with the others because beginning next year we are moving to the PARCC assessment. So it's my pleasure to present this tonight, in the fact that we are going out with a bang with this presentation with our results. I couldn't be happier to report to you the results that I was before. So just a reminder that NECAP is one of the assessments that we use. We have a comprehensive assessment system in our district, and so we use many points of data. NECAP is our state assessment, and so it's important results for us, and we've been able to track now for many years. So we have trends data that's very important because it shows significant improvement over an extended period of time. Also, when we look at the data, we're looking at, in some cases, some cohort data. In many other cases, we're looking at data results that are not cohort. We're also looking at longitudinal data, which you will see 5-year trends in many cases, and also that we are looking at results that are based on statistical significance. So though in some cases our schools went up 10%, for example, in writing, if it wasn't a statistical significance, I have not included it in these slides, but they are included in your handouts. So one of the most important things that we have, recognitions that we have, it's a distinction for NK, is that out of 6 Rhode Island public school districts, we are one of the 6 that demonstrated significant gains in both reading and math from 2009 to 2013. we had over that time period a 6% increase in reading and an 8% increase in math. This was cited right in the opening remarks of Commissioner Giss, also cited in the opening remarks for the state manual on test results. So it's a pretty significant achievement. Also, we had further distinctions. This is at the school level. We were showing statistically significant gains in both reading and math, again, from that time period, 2009 to 2013. In reading at Hamilton Elementary School, we realized 11% gain over that time period. At the high school in reading, a 9% gain. In math, at Wickford Middle School, a 9% gain, and at the high school, a 16% gain in math from 2009 to 2013. And we also have some distinctions in writing. So looking at it from a district perspective, we were once again one of 6 Rhode Island public school districts that performed significantly higher than the state average in writing. So at grade 5, now we only do the writing at grades 5, grades 8, and grade 11. So at grade 5, we had a 16% difference from the state achievement. So the state achievement at the elementary level was 64% proficiency in writing, and in NK we were 80% proficient. For grade 8, there was a 27% difference. The state average was 56 for proficiency. Ours was 83% proficiency. And for grade 11, 9% difference. The state was 66%, and we were at 75%. And we also had some significant achievements at the school level in writing. At Hamilton Elementary School, we had 18% difference between that school proficiency and the state. At Stony Lane Elementary, we had a 28% difference between the state average. That's incredible. At Davisville Middle School, we had 21%. At Wickford Middle School, another outstanding difference, 36%. And at the high school, 9%. So, to show the trend from 2009 to 2013 in reading, I'm going to read these aloud in case people from the audience cannot see them. And reading, starting in 2009, I'm going to read the scores of proficiency yearly from 2009. So we were at 82%, 82%, 86%, 87%, and 87%. In math, we started off in 2009 at 69%, went to 71, 71 again, 75%, and 77%. And in writing, we started at 65, went to 67, went down to 66, up to 72, and up to 79 with a finish. And then just to see this in a visual representation, you can see the achievement that we have from 2008 actually to 2013, seeing 6 data points. And we also see the difference between our scores in our district and the state. And this is in reading. I see it in math. And then in writing. See a jump there actually in our last scores for writing. The reason why there's only 4 scores there for the writing is because we had a year there were no results because they were piloting new test questions. So I'm going to give you 2 readings, points of data. The first one is the reading trends by cohort. So we have a 5-year cohort. This is following, just taking our 8th grade class right now and going back to 2009 and following that cohort of students. So when I say a cohort of students, it's the same group of students traveling from when they were in 4th grade through 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And you can see their progression starting at 79% proficiency in 2009 and going up progressively until 91% in our 8th grade level. That's for reading. And then the high school, this is not cohort reading because, as you know, it's the 11th grade only in the high school level that's tested. But I just thought it would give you an idea of the reading scores that we have had at that level, because we ended there at 93%. We maintained our reading from last year, which was a high reading. We were wondering if we were going to be able to hang on to that, and we did. So in math, we have a cohort example. This is also following our 8th grade class back from when they were in 4th grade, starting off at 79. They dipped there, went down a little bit. There was some concern going on, and particularly in the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, and then they came back up to 81% in the 8th grade. And for high school, you can see that mostly that was an upward progression. Overall, over the 7 years, a 13% gain in proficiency. Last year I ran some subgroup information for you, and so I thought that I would present it again. You have to keep in mind that with the subgroup population, it's not a large number of students. So the fluctuation from year to year happens. There's more incremental progress up and down. And so we're only seeing from year to year here. So keep that in mind. Our low income for reading, we have a 5% gain. That's our SES population. For those on IEP, our special ed population, we have 43%, 43%. They're counting it as a minus 1% because of a rounding off of the percentages. And then for math, we had a 3% gain in our SES, and for our IEP population, we went down in our math scores. And then finally, this is the last slide. This shows our graduation rate. This year we had a 4-year graduation rate of 91%. If you look below, you'll see the 4-year graduation rate going back 4 years. So in 2010, we had an 86% graduation rate. This is only for 4-year graduation. But this is the measure that is used by the in the national levels and the state levels. This is the important figure that they use. In 2011, we went up to 88%, and now the last 2 years we've been at 90% proficiency. This year, for 2013, they also gave us the 5-year graduation rate and the 6-year graduation rate. This goes back to a cohort from the year before, and the 6-year goes back to the class before that. So it's not these students, because this year we have, for 2013, we only have the 4-year graduation rate. We'll have the 5-year when the school year ends. So it's a different class. So I wanted to clarify that. In the first slide that I sent out to you, this information was not clearly represented. And there was an inquiry by Mr. Jones, and so I went back and clarified it and hopefully presented it on this slide a little more accurately. So in your packets or your handouts, we have some information that I wanted you to just to note. You have the graduation rates here, so if you wanted to go back on a class, you could follow it by color, and you can follow that class for its 4-year graduation rate, its 5th year, and its 6th year. And if you have trouble reading that, don't hesitate to contact me, because I understand it fully at this point now. In addition, you have in your packet, you have two things that were included. There is the analysis for every class cohort that we have, and you also have analysis of every school, every grade level performance, and that is over an extensive period of time. So you can see the trend lines on that. In addition to that, I have included the park letter that went out district-wide to let people know that we are beginning the park field test, and that is beginning in March. Every school in North Kingstown is doing the Park Field test, and also you have exactly which schools, which grades, and which test they are doing. The tests are in ELA and math. Some are done on paper versions, some are done on online versions. We also have two different components, the PBA, which is the performance-based assessment, and the EOI, which is the end-of-the-year assessment. So most schools are doing, in NK are doing the PBA. We do have a couple of schools that are doing both. And we have 3 schools that are doing the online. And to select the classes, we used a random generator tool that is done electronically, and that is what promulgated the classes, the lucky winners that would be taking the Park Field test. So that's happening this spring. And then next year we are going into operational testing of Park in the spring of 2015, although the kneecap will still run for the grade 11 students. Do you have any questions?
For all the districts in the state taking the test, the idea.
If the question is, are all the districts in the state taking the Park Field test, and that is a yes. Not necessarily all grade levels, though. So in our elementary schools, there might be grade 3 at one school taking it, grade 5 at another school, that one might be taking ELA, the other might be taking math. It's pretty randomly distributed. So that's the sheet that you have that looks like this. Tells you exactly who's taking what. Mr. Cerisi?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for the way you broke it down. The only question I had is you had mentioned the students that are in service through IAPs, slight dip in a couple of schools. I think one was actually pretty even, but there was slight dip in a couple of others. The way for the staff and administration to kind of help people again is to see exactly why we didn't improve and where we may be able to do some work to improve those scores.
Right, and with that, what you're seeing with that is not a cohort of students. So when you're looking at a dip like that, it's a little. I don't know how meaningful it is. So
you're not actually measuring the same group as students.
Right.
I understand.
And so at the school level, then they need to look at the actual students and what happened with each student.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumber. Maybe you can pass on to the commissioner like I did. This is the most confusing table, the way it's organized, that I would assume 99% of people would assume the class of 2010 applies to the same cohort, instead of you having to figure out color coding and skipping 3 different columns to get a consistent comparison. So maybe they just read data from the state. But I wanted to thank you for breaking out the scores by school and location, and sort of point out to my fellow committee members, if you look at a school like Wickford Middle and Hamilton, and the reason I point those schools out are the point I think the committee has talked about last month, and the superintendent has started to work on. We send almost $500,000 to a charter school who socioeconomically doesn't look like any of our schools. It's more homogeneous in terms of race and far more homogeneous in terms of low-income students, meaning basically have none. And yet those schools outperform that on some of these measures. And our schools that are even more socioeconomic diverse come close. So again, I think the point of the district sending almost $1 million out to schools when we have schools that either outperform or perform proportionally as well, something that I think the state should look at, our legislatures and others in terms of that. So thank you for that. And then like I think we talked about last year, our diving into data, I'm always interested to look at some gender things and then how our local board Thank you.
Our next presentation we have is from the Stony Lane Playground. Sorry. So as you know, they have they provided in our packet down in the corner of the park. Come closer to the mic.
You got to turn that mic on.
Good evening. My name is Maria LaRue, and with me here is Teal. We are the co-chairs for the Stony Lane PTO Playground Project. So we are here to present our project and hopefully get your approval to install a new playground at the Stony Lane Elementary School. I believe you do have our presentation, so I'm only going to briefly talk about this project. It basically started about a year and a half ago, and we conducted some research and finalized on a playground design that we thought would suit our school and our community. And we took this design and basically our strategy to fundraise for this project. We presented it to Mrs. King and Stephen Tremblay at the North Kingstown School Department. And they basically gave us the green light to go ahead and fundraise for this. Mr. Tremblay also did submit the design to the Rhode Island Trust, the insurance carrier that the North Kingstown School Department uses, and it was approved. What they basically were looking at was the design. The design does meet all ADA requirements, and it is considered an inclusive playground design in that it does allow children that are in wheelchairs to play on the playground. It does also meet the needs of children that may have some physical impairments, hearing, sight impairments, and also appeals to children that are in the autism spectrum as well. The project will cost us $100,000, and at the moment to date we have raised $59,000. 2 weeks ago we also received a response to a grant request that we made to the Rhode Island Shriners, and they basically informed us that once we reach 60% of our fundraising goal, they will give us a check for $10,000. So hopefully we'll meet the $60,000 very, very soon and secure the $10,000 check. We'll be at the $70,000 mark. We do have a number of fundraisers going on right now, but our last and major fundraiser will be on May 5th. It's going to be a golf tournament and auction event where we aim to raise somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000. Hopefully that will get us even closer to a fundraising goal, and we'll be able to install the playground this summer. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention. If you have any questions, we are here to answer them. Yes.
Terrific.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice job. Yes, I know. Took his effort.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment.
Sure.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation and for all the volunteer work that you've done. It's been and you guys are definitely so many people doing a lot of work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Viscardi.
As I echo what everybody said so far, I'm sure fellow regulars love the field. I'm actually very excited to see it coming slowly to fruition. There's two questions. When's the golf tournament?
May 5th of this year.
Where? North Jersey?
Potawatomi.
Oh, okay. And,
Are you a golfer?
yeah. The $100,000, is that site prep and everything? Is that turnkey? I mean,
So we will pay Playworld Systems is the manufacturer. So we will pay them $96,400. We will be installing the playground actually. So what happens is similar to what Quinnesset did. We will have the volunteers. They will bring the equipment. They will also bring 3 or 4 specialists from their company and basically guide us as to where to install the playground. And because they will be there, they will warranty the installation. And so it does include installation. And there's like $3,000 in there just for maybe landscaping, some benches, trees for shade, something like that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I know you presented this, you showed me this like a month and a half ago, and so I think it's wonderful. And I want to say hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get with some folks and see if we can, maybe they can put you over the top. So I
That'd be
will
great.
follow up with you on that.
Thank you so much.
All right. So it is on our agenda tonight under the D3 that this is before us here, and according to our policy FEDA for site plans, playground designations, we have to approve this. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion while they're here that we can bring D3 up right now. So do I have a second? Second. Okay. So all those in favor of approving D3, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. First we have to bring it into the agenda. So that was the first question is to bring it forward out of order out of the consent agenda. So that was your motion, right, Mr. Street? Oh, okay. So we are okay with bringing it. So it is, and we're making the motion to approve, and we have motion second to all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. You agree?
Thank you.
All right, that brings us into citizens' comments. So before we get into citizens' comments, I just want to say Dr. O'Day said something about the Music Man, and I don't know how many people were able to see the Music Man this weekend, but one of the key things of the Music Man is they have a core committee, school committee in the musical, and the school committee is bickering throughout the beginning part of the play, and they end up coming together because they all sing in a quartet together. I will make a promise to you here tonight that I will never make the school committee get up and sing in front of the group because I am opening challenge. So I just wanted to make sure that I reiterated that Dr. AJ was saying how great the musical was. I will never make this sing. With that, we have citizens' comments and our person to send it is Shane Metcalf.
Good evening, everyone. Sean McDonald, 67 West Hill Road. I know that you're all aware of the questions that I have regarding the health and safety of students and staff as it pertains to Wi-Fi and the use of wireless devices in our classroom. I would like to pause now to publicly thank Mr. Mudge for taking the time to look into the concerns raised by the medical and scientific communities, which are the concerns of a growing number of your community members. So, thank you, Mr. Mudge, for taking every opportunity to represent the interests of your constituents. I would like to offer you all that same opportunity. Members of your community have worked hard to put together a public forum to address the questions surrounding Wi-Fi in the schools. This forum will be led by national expert in the field, Miller Reese. Ms. Reese will present the science, address misconceptions, and answer questions. This forum will be held at the NK Community Center, which is by the NK Town Beach, this Thursday, March 13th at 7 p.m. It is an opportunity to learn more about an issue that affects the health and safety of your students and staff, and I sincerely hope to see you all there. I have the information right here. I'll give it to you right now. Any question?
What time is it?
It's at 7 p.m. this Thursday at the North Kingstown Community Center. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who didn't sign up who wants to speak for citizens' comment? Yep. first item is I need a motion to seal the executive session minutes for tonight's executive session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained. We're immediately executive session. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Did you know that we had talked about tabling P5?
I'll look for a motion at this time to table item P5.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Table, do we have anything to accept?
Yes. I'd like to accept C and D1 and 2. Before I have a question.
Do I have a motion to approve the B and E?
What was that? Excuse me, what was the three minutes?
Items B and G, the non-exempted items.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor say aye. Motion carried. All right, Mr. Mudge, let's go to the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the 2014? Mr. Mudge, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I did. At the minutes during the meeting, last meeting we had, at the end of the meeting, I attempted to discuss some issues concerning further cuts to the budget, which was not permitted. And I also asked for and provided some information that I received from Dr. Herbert from Harvard University regarding Wi-Fi issues that I wanted to discuss. And I gave it to at least the closure for the secretary.
In correspondence.
But I didn't see any of that in the minutes of the meeting.
It's in the correspondence for today's meeting.
Which one's one? A and B, kind of the name of it. Literally. C and D is not.
I think that the correspondence in tonight's meeting.
Yeah, Roman numeral 6, A correspondence, 1, A, B, C, and D, has your name, literally has your name under the
Madam Chair,
Yes.
This is to approve the minutes. This isn't commentary on our prior meeting. That's not what this agenda item is. It's to approve the minutes. We have a motion on the table.
Excuse me, I haven't finished my comments, please. Because there are some.
One person at a time.
Motion at this time to call the question.
Mr. Teresi, I think
Hold on. So the motion on the table is to approve the minutes. We've had a motion and a second. So, Mr. Mudge, you could tell us why you're not going to approve the minutes or why you don't think the rest of us should, but you don't merely telling us what you don't like about the minutes.
what I'm saying is it wasn't recorded in the text of the minutes that I had brought up this issue.
All right.
It was not recorded. Okay? And I think we could go back and look at that. That I had when we approved our school budget and sent to the town council, when we did that, we were told we would have ample time to address other cuts that we want. One was
Okay, Mr. Mudge.
no, that dialogue was not in the minutes of the meeting. Okay? And I want that recorded in there, but it should be. Number one. Number two is I attempted to provide the committee with some correspondence, okay, that you would also not let me address. That was not detailed in the minutes of the meeting, and I would like the minutes revised to reflect that.
I would second the motion to call the question.
All right, so we have a motion to call the question in a second.
Dundas Garden,
Yes.
Larry Parisi, Cheryl Parker,
Yes.
Robert Jones,
Yes.
William Marsh.
Nope.
Emily Brooks.
Yes. Motion carries. Motion one, to approve the minutes from February 25th, 2014. That's already been noted, so all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Great. That brings us to the executive session minutes of February 25th, 2014.
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to approval of bids and awards. The first one, D1, is school committee approval of the HVAC systems contract. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Mr. Mike, you brought this up for discussion.
Yes. I'd like to get some background, additional background on this. It seems that this company, CAM HVAC, was awarded this contract last June. We suspended in December for not complying with some regulation, and they had done some work, as I understand it, that was not accomplished by certified technicians or whatever. And also, so they were suspended, and I see now that you're going to award them a contract. And I'd like to know what happened between the time that we in fact suspended them in, I think it was December, and now, who was doing the work, okay, and why are they allowed to bid again at this point in time?
The answer to that question is that they were, it has been cleared up with this company and the facilities subcommittee that the person that they sent here was sent on an emergency issue, that they sent someone, we had called them and said we need somebody to come out. They sent someone that it was originally thought that they weren't properly licensed for that coverage, and we've gone over that with them. Their invoice was all revised. The person was qualified. Someone else came in and certified their work. And we did suspend them at the time looking at this. The other issue was they had not been asked to comply with prevailing wage and certified payroll issues prior to this. So we felt, and the facility subcommittee felt, that we needed to send that back out to bid. And they did not want to preclude CAM from bidding because they felt that the original RFP did not give them the information that they needed to properly carry out that first contract. So they were given the opportunity to bid. We also met, meaning Mr. Jim Grundy, who is the chair of the facility subcommittee, myself, and I met with the owner of the company prior to this meeting that we had with the group to review the other bids. And the facility subcommittee feels very comfortable that CAM is well qualified to do the work. They understand the bid gives them all the information that they need. They know they have to follow certified payroll, prevailing wage, as well as licensing issues. So the facility subcommittee is very comfortable with this appointment.
Was this company reported to the Department of Labor for after that providing prevailing wages?
They did. My understanding is that they have worked that out with the Department of Labor, and they understand.
Who reported them to the Department of Labor?
I don't know. I couldn't give you that information. It's not something that I would be comfortable discussing.
Was it Mr. Grundy?
I just said that I don't know, and it's something I wouldn't be comfortable discussing.
Yeah, well, my point is, if somebody from our facilities committee appointed these folks, okay, and went to the Labor Relations Board complaining that they weren't providing prevailing wages, was there something that became evident at the Labor Board that in fact that they were not violating the contract and that possibly we were premature in suspending them?
I don't
First
have an
place?
answer for you.
Excuse me?
I don't have an answer.
I think we ought to look at that. Okay.
Yes. I guess the easiest way that I know to explain what happened is the original bid was fuzzy. It wasn't nearly as pinpoint accurate as the one that went out with attracted families receiving arguments. And they can only do what they. When something is not clear, they can only do what they think they know. And it was not correct, but it wasn't clear what was expected. They didn't know that the expectations weren't clear, so that it was very difficult for them to meet them. That's why they were. That's why we had the misunderstanding about who came to do the work. This new bid is much more specific, much more detailed and accurate. So there should not be any question that comes up. Two answers in one.
John, I understand that. That's great. What bothers me is if somebody from our facility committee that represents us reports them to the labor committee, labor relations, or whatever, the Department of Labor, I'm concerned about that.
In fact, you said that. Okay. Nobody here said that's how that happened. Well, you just drew the assumption that the facility subcommittee reported it.
We never
said that.
I did not say the facility subcommittee.
Sorry, I'm going to rein
So
this
the
in.
point.
We're getting into a question.
No, it's because this is some legitimate issues because people representing us are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, possibly. And it never came through us. Okay? And in fact, what's happened as a result of that, and I'll be quiet after this, what happened as a result of that, okay, apparently somebody represented us, went to the Labor Relations Committee, okay, whatever it was, and got thrown out, and now the company's back in the process.
Says who?
Okay.
Bill? Says Bill
I
Motor?
don't know. Yeah.
Mr. Busker,
Should we look into that? Should we look into that? Are we afraid to look into that?
Mr. Sharif.
Mrs. King, this bid that we followed school department policies and state laws as far as bid regulations.
No, we didn't.
Yes, and we worked this through the committee.
We've awarded this bid in compliance with the state bidding laws and our school district policies on bids and contracts. And we vented this through the facilities subcommittee, facilities management subcommittee, which is volunteers from our community that serves as the pleasure of this committee. And they approved this as well.
Yes.
Were there any questions or concerns after this was vented from the facilities subcommittee?
No.
Did they vote on this?
We have a motion
Yes,
on
they
the
did.
Every one of them voted on it.
Yes, we did.
Okay, and they also, and I'll be quiet, they were also aware of the fact that a member of that committee, I believe, okay, reported a violation to the Department of Labor about this, and that caused them to be suspended. That's over and above that is over and above, okay, the duties and responsibilities that they have been offered. Okay.
Again, Mr. Mudge, you're the one that is drawing the assumption that somebody from the facility subcommittee reported it.
John, let's check it out.
So why are you drawing the assumption now?
motion to end debate and call the question.
John, should we check it out, John? Let's check it out, see if I'm wrong.
There's one. Pardon me. There's one thing, Mr. Mudd. It's one thing to say, hey, you know what? I think we should look at the process of how CAM got reported and why, as opposed to saying somebody from the facility subcommittee reported this and that's wrong. That's making an assumption that's completely irresponsible. And you know what?
So I'm going to call.
I agree. I think we should look into it, John. John, would you agree we should look into it?
Mr. Cerisi
I make a
has
motion
made a
that-
motion to call the question. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Call the question. Vote on that first.
John DeFrada.
Yes.
Larry Green. Yes. Cheryl Parker. Yes. Robert Jones.
Yes.
Steve Marks.
Miss
Okay.
Miss
Emily
Page.
James.
Yes. All right. So the question is called. So we have a motion on the floor to approve E1, and we have a second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed?
Miss Mudge, I'd like to make one short
Please,
statement.
please.
You know what? I haven't been on this facility subcommittee long, but I can tell you that it really irks me when people cast aspersions to these people. I have never met. I've been in the industry for 11 years here in Rhode Island and another 7 in Michigan before I moved here. I've been doing this for a while. I have never met a more dedicated bunch of people than people. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Jim Grundy and all the other guys who sit there and make the decisions that know about the things that we're talking about to better the school district. And it just really drives me when people cast aspersions to these.
Ken, let's follow up on it. That's all I'm saying. If that's the case, and somebody's doing that, they're doing something outside of the range. And by the way, we're talking about this committee. Okay, why did this committee get involved?
I'm going to take us back right now on to E2. Do I have approval, a motion to approve the AEP? Do I have a second? All right. And this again comes to us from the Facilities Committee, am I correct?
Excuse me?
Is there any questions on the motion to approve E2?
Yes, of course.
Mr. Mudge?
Yes. First of all, what did we spend? $50,000-$60,000 to get a report on the school here?
76.
$76. Because the report doesn't come back with any cost estimates. I don't know why you didn't do that. But number two, this report that we have in here, which is, very difficult to read, to say the least.
It's not the final report, and that's noted in your package.
Well, that's what's interesting, because this report that we have in here came back in December 12th, 2013, 3 months ago. And we're just seeing it now. And in the meantime,
because it's been continued to be worked all that time. We just had a meeting last week on it to finalize it.
Thank you. Okay, so we're putting out already, without this even being reviewed by us, a contract to have an in-house contractor, okay, Mr. Rouse, to give us a cost estimate. Isn't the horse ahead of the cart yet? We don't even have the report. And how come we don't have the report?
Because the matrix that you have is what's going to be the report.
That was my question. What is the report?
The report is only going to be words that summarizes the matrix.
And when is that report going to be available?
In a couple of weeks. They're still doing it. This is an incredibly complicated project, and they're still working on it. And that matrix that you have identifies every issue that is wrong. The only report you're going to get is just to summarize that information. The matrix is the detail. That's what you really want. And that's what the cost estimator will use to find out how much it's going to cost to each of these categories.
And we've already gone to the town and asked the architect of the town to do that, which I totally disagree with because his estimates have been poor in the past. Okay? We ought to get somebody else in to do that, and that's evidenced by the $6.4 million bond when he estimated $3 million for a roof that cost $1.4 million. We need a new set of people looking at these estimates.
Right. So, is there any other discussion on the motion?
Yes. Finally,
no,
excuse me, I haven't finished. Finally, my recommendation is...
your time.
Excuse me. You don't put any time on a school committee. By the way, the fact of the matter is that the town council should be paying for this. The town council should... Madam Chair, are you going to... You may not like what I say, Madam Chair. Okay? But that's...
I'm asking if there's a second.
I'm making a motion.
A second.
I'm making a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to end debate. Second, Doreen, could you please call the question?
I'm on to make an amendment to the motion, please.
You can't on a motion to end debate. That has to be voted upon first.
Well, by the way,
Yes.
we're not interested in sending this to the town council.
Go ahead, Doreen.
Yes. Robert Jones, yes. William Mudge. This is the call to question.
Yep.
Emily Denise, yes. John Scott,
Yes.
All right, so now we're calling the question, and that is to approve D2, the approval of the AEP's for the HVAC process. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. We had a motion to end the debate.
So do I need a roll call vote?
Sarah Cargan,
Yes.
Robert Jones, William Mudge,
No.
Emily Denise,
Yes.
John Scott.
It's a shame that we could not have a civil discussion about this because there's lots of really good information that we could have let everybody know about what this $76,000 gave us and how it's going to serve the school committee for years to come. For years to come. This is not an expenditure that's going to go away tomorrow. This expenditure is documents that will help school committees going forward make the proper decisions on what to fix and when. And we can't do it now because we've had unruly discussions. I vote yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that's not the issue. The issue is,
Yes.
the town council should be funding this, not us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us down to D4, internet, the district internet connectivity. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion on the floor. Mr. Munch, you exempted us for discussion.
Is this eligible funding under the $688,000 we're going to get?
No, this was the same as what we've been doing. It's moving funding, but this doesn't have anything to do with the Wi-Fi.
So that's equipment that's outside of the...
Right, it's a continuation of what we've been doing.
Okay, but again, it's separate equipment outside of what the purpose of the funding is. Thank you.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. That brings us to the end of the consent agenda for the business. And the first item on our list is the 2014-15 foreign language courses.
Since doing an original proposal on foreign language reduction, I want to remind the committee that we have reduced by 0.2 in foreign language for this upcoming year, 0.2 FTE. And with the understanding that we would be looking to eliminate language strand. It was a little less clear on through the meeting which strand we had actually cut. What I would like to do, what I would like to propose based on discussions with several members of the committee, hearing your concerns and wishes about this, is that I would like to make the cut this year, as we already have, 0.2, and that we would look to reduce by another 0.2 next year and make a decision at that time if it is the wish of the committee to reduce a language strand, and that if we make that decision, that would be based purely on enrollment. That gives this season of signing up for courses and time to see where that lands, and then we would make decisions whether we reduce or not, and to what extent based purely on enrollment as we do for other electives at the district.
All right, so that is the recommendation that we took recommended.
Dr. Ritchie, just to clarify, so we're still going to be reducing from 0.2, but not necessarily in the foreign language department.
Oh, no, we would reduce a section of foreign language this year. We still would do that. It just wouldn't be based on eliminating strength.
It'll be based on
Yes.
0.2.
So it may be a section of Spanish doesn't run, but we still run Spanish courses, German courses, Portuguese courses, and French.
I understand. Thank you. So I don't really, I don't really think we need a motion for this. There's really nothing close to it.
Well, the night that we did it, I had proposed that night that the language was Portuguese. I don't think when we did the vote that we actually said it would necessarily be that. But this is for clarification purposes. That it would not be a particular strand that we're cutting.
So what our motion would be to eliminate 0.2 superintendent's discretion with foreign language. So I'll offer that motion at this time.
I'll second it.
Jim?
I just want to clarify whether we also need to amend the program of studies. But I believe 14.1 is not in the program of studies, so if we amend the program of studies to reflect the superintendent presentation.
I would simply have that done in response to the vote here.
I don't disagree, but I'm saying administratively it just makes it
How about
cleaner.
if I'm going to withdraw my motion. So my motion will be to approve the 0.2 reduction recommended by the superintendent, and to amend the course of studies to reflect.
So your motion is second, further discussion.
I'd like to amend the motion, please. I'd like to add that we retain German, we not eliminate German. I know, but when it comes to a strain, I'm not sure whether we're going to cut down French, German, or Spanish, or something else. I don't want to see a program completely eliminated.
It's not happening.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that that's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Second. Mrs. Clark will be seconding Mr. Mike.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought we were still in discussion.
Okay.
I'm second on that motion.
So I want to withdraw the motion based on the fact that we will eliminate the German.
Right, okay, so we just, right now, we just have Mr. Reese. Okay, Mrs. Clark, can you give your hand up first?
Can I just make one comment?
Yes.
Okay. I personally am very happy to see us revisit this issue because, I personally walked away from that meeting that we had approving the program of studies that thinking that we had canceled Portuguese or eliminated it. I think we've now, it's really not our decision to pick and choose what subjects are going to be eliminated. I think it's now in the hands of the students and the foreign language department to sell their languages to one another and come back and then we make a decision based solely on enrollment once we get to that stage. So I'm very happy with the outcome of this revisitation of the foreign language courses.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. Okay, Dr. Ajay has indicated to me that the topic of discussion is 2014.
I just want to allow Mrs. King a moment to talk a little bit about what we are learning in terms of projections, in terms of healthcare.
Last week, Mr. Embry and I met with our representatives from the trust, and this is about the time of year where we get our actual rates and premiums for the following July. I'm just going to cycle you back a little bit. When we were back in October, November actually, when we had hired a healthcare consultant and we were working with the teacher's contract, we were very early into the year. And our healthcare works, it's all about claims. If you have a high claims year, then your rates go up high, and that would be, the town and the school are together in that. What Mr. Embry and I found out last week, I believe it was last Thursday we met with the trust, is that we had a very good claims year in the town of North Kingstown. And our rates are going to be coming down 11.56%. That is phenomenal. And apparently, most of the districts that are with the trust have very good years also. So between that's a decrease, and I'll take you back also. So the way we were budgeted is because of the new teacher's contract, we had premium numbers. So that was a fixed number. So there was no actual increase. We actually had decreases in our health care line item because of that new teacher's contract that we negotiated, and we had a premium for family and a premium for individual. On the ESP side, we actually were budgeting an 8% increase in those premiums because, again, back in October and November when we were going over all this with the consultant and with the trust, that was where they were projecting everyone to be. So two things going on. We have a swing in the ESP budget rates. Actually, it's a 20% swing if you look at it because I had an 8% increase and the rates are going down almost 12%. And then the premiums have been adjusted on the high deductible health care plan with the health savings account option. So all of that equates to approximately $800,000 in savings to the budget that you approved last week because of rate reductions. 2 weeks ago because of rate reductions. So that's really good news for us. As a finance person, I don't often able to deliver good news. The only thing that I will need to caution you, because you know that's how we finance people are, we always have to caution you as well, is that that's probably not something we would be looking at year after year, but it certainly is really good for us in this year.
We're talking about the 2015 budget, right?
Yes, the suits start July 1st.
Excellent. Listen, we talking about the budget. We approved the budget, reduced the budget by some $225,000. And the issue with that was that there was supposed to be eliminating 3 full-time FTE positions. And this documentation you sent us, I don't see that it's happening.
Because that's not what you voted on.
That is not what we voted on, yeah.
You voted $200,000 at the discretion of the superintendent.
Well, I think the point was that we wanted $200,000 to be cut for full-time employees. We discussed that on how to do that. Do we do that by cutting a specific FTEs? We said no, we couldn't do that. We didn't want to do that. That was the intention was to let, as far as I'm concerned, the superintendent make the decision of which full-time equivalents were reduced. That was my understanding of what we voted on. Okay, and we did not vote on, for example, eliminating $19,000 of supplies. We did not vote on many of these things. So I'd like to know why we didn't follow through with the reduction of the FTEs, and why didn't we make these other cuts?
I take full responsibility for that. When that vote was taken, there were a few comments, and I apologize if I misunderstood. There were a few comments about giving me some latitude about how and where those cuts would go. And, out of the $200,000 that was asked to be cut, there is over $100,000 of that is staffing. And in looking at the overall package, the overall program that we provide to students, it was my decision to say, what do I prioritize in certain cases? What do I need more to do the work of this district well? And it was my opinion that there were a few items, such as the supply line, that I could more easily do without, and the staff. So, we're obviously not done with this. We're going to have to see, what comes back to us tonight, and after the town looks at the budget, and I'm more than happy to pursue other avenues to save money with you at that time. But that was my decision, and I apologize if I misinterpreted the rule of the committee.
Thank you. I just wanted to discuss primarily page 33. This came up here. We've had discussions about this offline. I spent Friday some time on it in your office, and then spent some time on the phone the other day. And it concerns me most, and I know, and you see, I know up front, you're not a fan of this page. I don't know. Only because I think that it's misleading. Not to say that it's wrong, but I think it's just misleading. If you look at page 33 and you look across the line items that are represented here, it is you're showing an increase of 5 feet. There's an increase of 5 FTEs from 14 to 15. top section of it, and as a side, I mentioned this the other day. I don't know why school committee's on there. About school. That should mean that those numbers should be reflected in mine. When you get down to the second half of the page, showing another plus 1.5 classroom teacher assistants. So I don't know how this, as a person that doesn't work with this thing on a daily basis, and there are people who look at this that work with it even less than members of the school committee. This is a very misleading page because we're saying one thing, but we're showing another.
Well, first, I do want to clarify that the TAs down at the bottom, Mr. Biscardin, are included in the total up above, so they're not in addition.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
that's
So, and there are about 4.1 FTE increases. There's a 1.85 on the general fund. Now, I'm going to cycle you back. There was 3.25 was recommended by Dr. Roger a few weeks ago. We had our meeting 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Roger cut 1.4 out of that. That leaves us with 1.85 from the general fund, additional FTEs, and then 2.25 from grant funding, and that was also on your worksheet. So that totals your 4.1.
I can piggyback on this. I want to pause for a minute and be clear about how this can be a little confusing. And to start to put some things into context, when I originally proposed my budget, I was looking at a small add in staff. It was clear that the committee would not entertain such a thing, and I came back with a zero add in $0 add in staffing, and after our last meeting, it was a $200,000 reduction in staffing. There's been a $200,000 reduction in staffing. When we count it simply by FTEs, it becomes enormously misleading. Let me give you one example of that. There are a number of teachers that are reduced for FTEs. A typical teacher FTE beginning salary and benefits is roughly in the neighborhood of $70,000 to $75,000. That, if I reduce one of those, but then in another place I added 2 part-time clerks, and the way those get configured, they're basically 3.5-hour employees with no benefits, no pension, at about $13,500 across the district per year. Combined is $27,000. Those two things, $75,000 and the $27,000, are one FTE. So there's been a lot of situations here where what was reduced was significantly more expensive than what was added. And what I've simply been trying to do is fill the needs of the district, working very hard to be as efficient as I possibly can, but understanding that I need certain people for reasons of safety, I need certain people for reasons of kids' education, and I'm trying to do the best I can with understanding the budgetary constraints that we're dealing with. And I have met the demands of the committee in terms of the dollars that we have wanted to reduce. So I just need to want everyone to be kind of cautious about counting FTEs because they're not the same. There's a very big difference, for instance, between 2 part-time PAs and what they come into and say an administrator. The difference being, when you consider the salary and benefits altogether, you could be looking at somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 difference. It's still one FTE. So I hope there's an acknowledgement that in the spirit of this, it's a significant reduction in costs while we're still trying to maintain the level of staffing that we're going to need to move the district forward.
That is exactly the point why I brought this up, Doctor.
That's why it's confusing.
Because this doesn't reflect all that.
Right.
It doesn't.
I understand.
And anybody that looks at this that doesn't understand that, they're going to,
I agree.
Not to mention any specific people, a group of people, they're going to look at this and go, what in the hell are they doing adding, 5 people to their staffing when they, enrollment's gone down and we're in the financial position we're in. I think this is a very misleading page, and I just wish something could be done with it So, you know, like I spoke with, like I said the other day, came that sometimes what businesses do is they separate their business operations. They have the legacy operations where they can have year-to-date figures and they can determine staffing and sales and profit from one year to the next. And they have their startup operations, in this case would be our Davisville Academy. But they separate those two, so when people look at it, they can say, okay, I understand why we're opening up this facility. We need X amount of people, but also I also see that aside, our legacy operations, day-to-day operations, year-to-date figures from last year, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, we are maintaining, we have reduced, and we have been including in our decisions. This is set aside. And it just helps make a clearer picture. We get footnote this page, you know, asterisk, good luck asterisk, never good luck asterisk. Little stars beside those numbers that I think that this would help a lot of people who aren't as intimate as you guys with this book to understand it. My fear is it's going to be misinterpreted and we're going to be left defending ourselves when we really shouldn't have to.
I understand, and I think I'm not really sure where the origin of the worksheet comes from, and I do apologize. I really did not have time to work on a different format of it, but I think a couple of things you and I talked about is adding some footnotes to bring in the dollars instead of just adding up heads. I think that's great. Maybe I could even add something we didn't talk about. I could probably even add on there the average salary of some of those. Like I could group them by teachers, and the range is this, and TAs, the range is that. That might help. Same with clerks. You and I had discussed, Mr. Biscardi, possibly pulling out the grant-funded employees and putting them in a different section. Absolutely can do that. And also, I think in this case for FY15, because it's a different year, maybe even the other section for separate section for DE, and that might help where we add some dollars instead of just doing a tally. And again, I don't know the origin of why this worksheet came about. You know, I'm sorry to say I've just really carried it forward, so we can fix that.
And just one other mention along the same lines is, again, we spoke about this, the line item detail. If in the future we could include it alphabetically, because again, I think that helps people that aren't as intimate with it as you. If somebody wants to see what we spent, you know, what we projected for sake of argument, supplies, we can alphabetically go down and find the S's as opposed to having to hunt through it, peck through it, because this is done by object number, or if it's done by variance on variance of this year over last. You know, I just think for people that are new to this, alphabetically would be a much easier way to find the information you're looking for.
I can do that, and I have also, I've said before, and I will repeat it again, if there's any different way that somebody wants to see some data, and that includes the town council, I'm glad to run a report. I mean, the report that you just spoke about, Mr. Biscardin, is the object level detail. It'll take me about 10 seconds to run that alphabetically as opposed to by variance high to low, which Mr. Jones had asked for. I believe Mr. Jones and Mr. Mudge had asked for last year. So I'm glad to do that. And if the town council wants to see anything differently, they can contact me. They can have Mr. Embry contact me. I'm glad to rerun those reports.
Thank you again. Thank Council for bringing this topic up. And I think, Mary, we'd also maybe talk about benefits, eligible, non-benefits, kind of make in terms of general grant funding, benefits and non-benefits.
Yes, and that can be based on their, let me think about that one. You know, because clearly I know the TAs at the bottom, you can see that. Anybody who's under 30 hours a week, no benefits. You know, so that might even actually be a footnote kind of thing too, because all the other FTEs start getting melded in. But I could definitely do something like that.
Right, but I think the other point too, and I'm not sure this is necessarily captured in the table. Maybe this is something Dr. J that could accompany this kind of thing is when you look at, and I'll just take, what's on the table, you can look at the bottom line number that John was pointing out, but if you look at sort of the different ways we're grouping these, there's some tremendous variance in those. For example, just grade 1 through grade 6, we have a minus 10 FTEs over 3 years. And that's pretty much explainable by declining enrollment. It's pretty much the ratios in those elementary school classrooms fairly tight. But you go down and say, well, language arts is up 0.6, but reading and literacy is down minus 5. So that's sort of just a different way we're categorizing people, a different approach we're doing. Math is up 1.5, but science is down, and social studies down 1.2. Is that reflecting elective differences, or maybe a focus on, math kneecap, remedial work? I think there's a lot of sort of puts and takes that occur after you get past the elementary school, where obviously enrollments decline, but maybe there's a shift in emphasis, there's a shift in curriculum, there's a shift in stuff, and so I think there's a little context. Obviously, special education is up 0.3, and that's, maybe because the need has increased, and those kinds of and paraprofessionals and teaching assistants is up 11.5 FTEs over 3 years. Again, maybe reflecting those kinds of needs. So, something that accompanies this may be also the linking with the educational capabilities and functions that are sort of driving some of these concepts as well. Because I always think in the end we should be linking our resources to the capabilities we want to provide that are tied to the outcomes we want to achieve. And providing that kind of context as well. Again, it doesn't get captured easily in a chart or a table, but it provides some more clarity. So maybe that's something that can go hand in hand as we sort of work on making this kind of data more useful. The only other, John said? Mary, the only thing I was going to ask too was on the I'm sorry. FY, the fund balance page, and their fund balance schedule. Were there changes to FY14? Did they capture actual appropriations? Or it just looked like the solid change.
It did because we appropriated money for the buses.
Okay.
So that gets reserved in there and will be paid out of there.
Okay, so that looks like
I'd like to share, put this in for the record, please. John, I had the same questions you did, and I'd like to put that in for the record. Keep them if you want. I don't have a lot on. This was my concern, Dr. Jay, also I asked you to provide me some additional information regarding Davis Elementary. So I think this is right, but bottom line numbers, I did it right because we were talking about an increase of 3.25 for Davis Elementary School, and but the sum total for the district was we were scaling down 5.4 positions that varied, and that information is all on there. And in fact, we were adding to the district 7.4 positions, and at Davisville Academy we had 3.25. So there was a total of 10.65 swinging around. So the grand total was we were adding 5.25 positions in this budget at a cost of $273,000. And it includes the Davisville Academy. Had we not addressed the Davisville Academy, the net would have been, two full-time employees. And also, you'll see on this chart,
your math's wrong, Mr. Mudge. It's just not true.
But just look at the chart.
I'm not looking at your chart.
Look at.
We're the ones that provide the charts, and
well,
you need to look at those.
I'm
shown you over and over again spreadsheets
you,
of Davisville and the rest of the district. We are not adding the number you just mentioned. Not even
Okay.
close.
And I didn't make these numbers up. It was the data you provided.
I don't know what you did because they're not right.
Okay, well, I would ask you to correct me if I'm wrong. These are the numbers that I brought up, and the numbers we talked to are
Right, the numbers
exactly
you
like
brought up.
Mrs. King said, 3.25 and 5.25. You were reducing, Dr. O'Shea, the high school, okay, by a number of personnel, okay? DMS was reduced by 1, special education teachers by 1 at the high school, Forest Park by 1.
Here's Davisville by 2.
I'm just telling you what the current information was that I had, okay, that was in this process. That's why I asked the clarification before. You notice that also I'm concerned because what I do is I put the funding source in here, whether it's a general ed program or special ed program, and then, who's funding this thing. And as you can see in this chart, there's many, like Mr. Jones said, okay, many different avenues of funding and impacts on this, where this stuff is going. So, again, I think this gives you a fairly clear indication of what's happening here. And, again, I stand by what I said. The total number was $273,000, okay, in increases that you proposed with the budget.
Well, you're wrong.
Okay, then please, I would please ask you to look at this and show me where I'm wrong.
Well, I think you need to look at the information that I've already given
I would
out
ask
more
you
closely.
to look at my information and tell me where it deviates from yours, sir. So, if I'm wrong, I'll be glad to say that I'm inaccurate.
Great. So,
I expect, Dr. O'Shea, you'll get back to you.
I've given you all the information I can possibly give you. I've given you spreadsheet after spreadsheet. So if you just look at those, I'm sure.
Dr.
you'll be
O'Shea,
fine.
I've correlated all that data with this spreadsheet. Okay? Would you please look at that
I
and
think
tell
you
me
should go
if
back
I'm
and do it
incorrect?
again.
Huh? Would you please tell me?
If you're incorrect, because if the number you came up is an addition of 5 staff, you're incorrect.
It was
so please look at it
5.25.
again.
It was just like was just said before that. It was 5.25 and 3.25. That was my conclusion, 5.25. Don't tell me it wasn't. And so I'm asking you politely, like I asked you in the email, could you please fill in the blanks for me? So if you're refusing to do it, I understand it.
I think that Dr. Ajay has provided you with budget. He has provided you with the answer. And
Madam Chair, I had the same concerns as Mr. Biscardi, the very same concerns. So I went out of my way to try to look at these things, to understand these numbers, okay? And this is what I came up with, okay? To make that
I will
more simple.
resend you the add and subtraction chart that we've sent out a number of times. I'll resend it to you tomorrow.
I would appreciate it if you would correlate that with the information that I put together here, which came from other data.
all right, so that brings us to the CIP existing bond, future bond, and the security and technology.
Under that piece, this was a request of members of the school committee. We would ask that we come back with a little bit more detailed information from the consultants that we're working with on our technology and security expenditures, especially as they correlate with our CIP requests in those areas. I was able to put together with educational collaborators. They sent me some preliminary work, and you have that letter from them stating that at this point they are on the cusp of doing their parent survey. They've already done focus groups, and they've done a lot of work with us to help us frame our goals in terms of broad directions that we would like to move. And they can say at this point that they concur with us that the appropriate next step still, the survey that we're looking at is going to be more focused on one-to-one initiative stuff. But they feel that before we get there, that the one-to-one initiative, if we decide to move in that direction, if and when, that be a phase 2 item. That phase 1 would be that we continue to increase the number of interactive whiteboards in our classrooms, the Atlas boards that we've been purchasing, Also that we continue to increase the number of laptops. Right now we're doing this work with parts, and regardless of whether we go to some kind of a one-to-one initiative at some point, they feel there is certainly a need in this district to do more with that. They also feel that we should improve our infrastructure to support the new devices while being mindful of the capacity needed for future devices, particularly prepare for one-to-one implementation with students. That, as you know, is being done with the wireless fixtures that's already been approved, and to raise instructional capacity for engaging students in technology-rich environments and professional development. So this is the document that I am presenting to you tonight, and that I would use as some backup for the CIP request that will be presented to the town council in the upcoming workshop. I am looking to have a similar document from our security consultants, and they tell us that is on the way. That work has been very exhaustive, kind of like the HVAC item. There's a lot to look at, and the more you begin, the more you realize that a number of systems need to work together. That purchase, or I guess that we would be looking at a number of different purchases over a long span of time, because it's going to be a large item. And what they are recommending is to begin with technology. That it is not prudent to be installing cameras, for instance, or to be doors that lock automatically, or swipe keys at doors, if your technology infrastructure isn't well equipped to sustain it. So they're looking at kind of a coordinated item to suggest to us that would start with the technology in mind, and from there move to some of the kinds of purchases that we are looking to do. And I anticipate, I was hoping to have that letter for you as of yesterday. It is taking some time to get there. So as soon as I have it, I will forward it to you, and it will become an item that will be used as a basis for the request that is already forwarded to the town council about the city.
Dr. Zay, the letter you provided has a thing about see attachment for details. Can we get a copy of the attachment, please?
Yes. I believe you already have the attachment. It was something we sent a few weeks ago, but I will resend it. It was that goals document that I provided previous meeting. I apologize. Yeah, I forwarded to you the previous work that they had done on our goals. And there, I believe this attachment is connected to those goals. So you would see an earlier draft of that. So I will resend that in conjunction with it.
Okay. Could we maybe then also see, like, I know they held focus groups. Isn't this the same group that helps focus groups?
Yes.
Do they have, like, summary of some of their findings and stuff that we can see too? That support their...
I will ask about that. I know they're preparing a much more comprehensive report to include all of that. I believe they're planning to send all of that with the results of the parent survey that's about to go out, parent and student survey that's about to go out. But I can ask for some preliminary data on that to get to.
Mr. Mike.
Excuse me. There's two items on this in the bond issue. We did approve the 688K bond. We haven't approved that. But nonetheless, that plus the $200 and some thousand that we got appropriated. Have we gone to the town council and asked them to appropriate that for us?
I'm not sure what.
The $688,000 is a grant. Ms. Barrington is aware of that. I don't know the 200.
Well, the 688,000 got to be approved by the town council, right?
It does not have to be approved by them. It's a grant that we were awarded from RIDE.
I think, again, would you please put something in writing to the town? I believe the town charter specifies that the town council was acceptable. That's all I'm asking you to do.
We'll make sure that we follow up everything appropriately to the town, and we'll discuss that.
Okay, we'll send a letter to them and look at the town charter, and I'll be glad to give it to you again. Make sure the town council is cut in on this like it's supposed to. Also, we just added $220,000 in this year's budget. The town council must appropriate that to increase our line of spending. Please send that to the town council again and get their endorsement. Again, that is the town charter. Period. I mentioned this before. Somebody should either tell me to go jump in the lake, I'm wrong, or we should start following the town charter. Excuse me?
On your intention that the town council
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
will be receiving a legal opinion on that within the next week.
Town council has to.
Your issues with the surplus, we've just gotten a decision from RIDE as to whether or not the town council has to approve it or not, and we will be giving you a legal opinion that will share the rest of the
Oh, do you think it's going to change from the opinion you gave us?
Yes, it is, actually, because my original opinion
What's exactly what I said?
needed that the town council would need to approve any surplus funding. As of yesterday, we received, we have asked RIDE for an opinion. We've received an opinion letter from Dave Abbott, and we'll be providing that letter with the next week.
Now, does that override the town charter?
That should override the charter, yes. Statute, law,
It's a local law, really.
it's coming.
Okay, well, that's good. Then we'll just send that out to the town council and tell them we don't need their approval, that's all.
All right.
That's fine.
Do we have any more discussion on the CIP? Not. Let's move on to the.
So just one on the
revisions
CIP.
Of the CLAC bylaw.
Just one on the CIP. We're going to let the town select whatever they want to fund for us. You know,
So your question
well, the CIP, we sent over a list of, several thousand, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yes, I think it's up to them if they want to fund anything or nothing.
But we don't have a priority, that's all I'm saying.
We do. It is listed in priority order.
You gave them a list of I misinterpreted that application. Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the approval of revisions to the CLAC bylaws. I believe that we received an email that has that. You may have not given your packet.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so that brings us down to policy. The first policy is a read-only first read, that we're not approving this tonight. I've had two people say to me that I've had Dr. Humbert on my way in here, and Mr. Jones sent me an email saying that we need to make sure that we're checking for identification. And so I'll make sure that there is a sentence that is added to that policy before it comes up to us. Are there any other
Now, this is which one was that, please?
It is the release of students from school.
Yeah,
And this is something that we have talked about in the policy meeting, that we're going to make sure that we send out to parents and to it's already been discussed by the principal, so that people know that this is coming up, and that we also make sure that we have a way of being able to get another emergency contact form, that if they need to update the old one, that they realize that Grandma or John or the grandma will be picking up the child, that grandma can be added to the emergency contact list.
Yeah, I just have a comment on that, and I think it's fine, but suppose somebody does show up because the family has some sort of emergency, okay, and none of the people can participate in it. Can somebody call to the phone and say, yeah, it's okay for my granddaughter or somebody else to pick up my child? So what do we do if the parents are not there and out in Timbuktu or something? They're not on the list. Are we going to house the child overnight?
No, the child will probably go home in the school bus. The child to get home would stay to the end of the day, get home in the school bus like they normally do, and then at that time, when they came to the home, at that time, if the approved person was there, they could pick up the child.
Right. So this is an early release then.
This is if you're picking up your child and
Yeah.
taking it out.
Okay.
All right, so that brings us to the next policy. This is for an update. This is the interrogations policy. And prior to looking at this, the policy committee noticed that we don't manual searches, very little with interrogation. So we passed this on to Mary Ann Carroll, and she has stated that our searching is fine. Basically what we're looking at here in this change is we're looking at the two changes. Last year the state legislature changed that if policemen are talking to students at school, that the parents have to be called prior to the police officers talking to children, the students. So that's what we added to the policy, just saying we made reference to state law. And the other thing we put in there is that if the principal is going to be talking to the students, they will talk in a professional manner. Now, I know that can be of a concern. Mr. Jones said to me the other day in the same email that he wanted a parent to be called in. Remember, we're talking here about we don't want to tie the hands of the principal here. And that when you have a principal who's looking into a matter, who's gathering this sort of information, you don't want it to be that every time they call down a student that they have to call the parent to ask them if they're going to be, if it's okay to ask the student a particular question. So it is the sort of thing of we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for the principal to be able to ask questions for the dean of students or whoever that may be. And so that was the reason why we kept this rather just what we said. They will be conducted in a professional manner. It's not the same as an interrogation done by a police officer.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's a one sentence in a very complex situation. And my email was never the intent of tying the hands of the administration. What I asked was that we consider that this whole area, first of all, in dealing with minors and dealing with adults who are in a position of power, they're not similar. So let's just start with the cognitive and emotional things of kids in any kind of situation where there's clearly a person who has a degree of power and influence over them is not an equal setting. And this is not to disparage our administrators. It's simply to acknowledge that fact. Now, I would like to distinguish also between, as the law seems to have been done, it's not just cut and dry between a law enforcement officer and a non-law enforcement officer. For example, there was a case in North Carolina where a law enforcement officer was in the room but didn't ask a question. But still the court ruled that presence, has an influence. Right. And so my point is simply that it would never be my intent to tie the hands of administrators in what is, in their opinion, an emergency situation that requires them to find out information and act in the best interest and safety of the students. What I merely asked is, first of all, in non-emergency situations, but where the potential consequence for the student, there are consequences for the student from a line of questioning, that we at least put in one safeguard of asking the administrator to at least first call the parent to inform them that this could be going on. Again, in a non-emergency situation where you say, does it really make a difference in 10, 15, 20 minutes, a half hour, that finding out this information is going to somehow compromise the integrity or safety of the school? Again, I leave that judgment up to the administration. But I would like to at least think that our students in those kinds of non-emergency situations where there are possible consequences for their answers, that they at least have one level of protection from that. Because we recognize, again, that as well-meaning as administrators are, I would like to think that students hold them in some degree of both respect and fear to some degree. And again, I don't mean it in a negative sense, but that the administrator is in a position of responsibility. And so I would simply say that instead of having one generic sentence, let's recognize that this issue has a degree of complexity and at least add that little bit of issue. Again, leaving the decision of whether it's an emergency or non-emergency to the administration, leaving it whether there are consequences or this is merely a fact-finding, informational thing to the administration, but at least defaulting to where it's non-emergency, but with negative consequences, we add one level of safeguard. Take the time to call a parent and say, I want to question your student about this issue. And give them a reasonable time. If you'd like to be there, I'm going to do it, this afternoon, today. Okay? I'm just saying that, again, let's recognize that there is a degree of power difference in those kinds of situations.
Okay, but where would the level of complexity be? I'm just thinking that, so it's a sort of thing, if you call a student down for information, then how do you second guess whether this student, you say, if this student really gives me information, then it is, then and nothing will happen to them. But is this student going to give me information that implicates them, so I better call the parent? It's the sort of thing that now you're getting into that the principal has to guess whether the information gathered from the student, if they're going to implicate themselves or not, and so therefore do we have to call the parent? And pretty soon, you'll have principals trying to guess as to what is the student's level of culpability when they're just trying to get information. And you'll be having to call the parents all the time. You're never getting any information without calling the parents first. And I see that it's being something that'll just really bind up the whole, just asking questions of the students. It shouldn't be that every time a principal wants to ask a student a question, that they have to evaluate whether the student is going to incriminate themselves and decide if they need to call the parent or not.
Well, I would argue that I don't think it's that level of thing. I think there are very specific circumstances where we know what applies. Well, yeah, let's add a point of, say, the police call an administrator and say, hey, we got wind that this thing happened. Well,
if that's what you consider an interrogation, what I'm hearing is that every time a principal were to question a child, like, for example, did you cut class? Did you steal somebody's backpack? I mean, if every time the principal had to call a parent on issues like that, the questions would go on. But I think you're looking at interrogations as of, is it something that we're questioning regarding something that might have happened on the outside, like
yes.
Yes. So maybe I don't think...
Thank you, I obviously did not make myself clear on that, Mary.
So I think with interrogations, first of all, I think we should take the sentence right out, because that's not a role of support. That certainly, the police can't question without a parent, and they can't ask the principal questions without a parent. Because you're right, in the past, principals used to have like the resource officers sitting in their office, and they do all the questioning, or the police would call and say, gee, there was a break-in, can you question? We're not even supposed to be doing that as principals at all. So,
well, then let me present a case somewhat in the news of what happened with East Greenwich students in the North Kingstown location. So if the police there called the East Greenwich high school principal and say, hey, there's a ton of your students at this place doing something that underage thing, okay, but at that level, I would think it's appropriate that before the principal starts calling in students one by one, that you say, hey, okay, I'm going to call the parent on this because it's not an emergency. There are definite consequences, and the information really came from
off-campus activities reported by the police.
I don't disagree with you, and I can go one step further. I don't think that's the role of the principal to do.
Well, but it happens because there could be school consequences as a result of off-campus
I don't think that's
activities.
the role of the principal to do. So I go so far as to say the principal should not be doing that. If there's a problem, granted, with all of these...
So it's like the chemical, right, that's
yeah,
my point.
well, we can have that debate on another day, but...
Well, but it impacts this policy to me.
But I don't believe that the job of the principal is to do the investigation and interrogation of something that happened on the outside. It's not the role of the principal. They got enough to do with the school, just to safety in school.
Didn't that happen locally, though, too? Where a child or children were disciplined because of something they did on a non-school day, on non-school property, not during school hours.
Right, because there's... But we have right, that's my point, is we have a policy that activity can affect the school, the discipline from school activities, and my point is, that's a situation where I think it's okay to have in policy that take 10 minutes and call a parent.
Maybe what you need to do is amend that policy so that it's clear that if you're going to start going for what happened in the neighborhood that affects the chemical policy, then you call the parent before the child. I agree. I think that policy should have to call the parent. That certainly isn't an emergency in the school. So maybe we need to look at that policy. Maybe we need to take the sentence word out of this policy. Principals are not supposed to be interrogated. They can't stand in the position of a policeman and two policemen work. Because now you're really avoiding the law of interrogation that says anytime you have a question of a child, something like that, you have to work. So that's the policy we need to end.
Okay.
And the policy, we can look at that policy and we'll do the rest.
Well, I'll let you.
I agree with Ms. Carroll's suggestion of possibly deleting a sentence with regard to the interrogation. And we should probably consider just renaming the policy. Take out the term interrogation when we're just substituting for something else that is clear the policy refers to.
I think we need to table this.
But
That's fine. If the committee would like to send this back to I just want to make sure we have guidance before it gets sent back to the policy committee so that we know what the school committee wants.
I think there's some guidance. I think we have to revisit both of the clinical health policy and this interrogation policy.
Mr. Mudge.
yes, do we have an existing student interrogation policy? We do.
It's enacted.
So, I would suggest that we do the following. I have read the State Law 1621-5. That is a complete and separate Rhode Island general law, okay, which deals specifically with the law enforcement agencies. So you can separate that out completely. And there are examples in here that they cite, for example, what is the authority, what is the formal questioning, what are those determinations. For example, if the police, if it's a police officer or somebody equivalent to him, okay, they cannot talk to the parent. Even if they call the parent can refuse the interrogation of that child by the officer.
Right, and we state the policy that will follow that law.
But it is not articulated. I don't think that's that articulated in this policy because it just uses it as a reference. So if you need to separate interrogation, student interrogation by police officers or police officers, or local police officers. Yeah, right. You've got to separate that policy, and in fact, you ought to enunciate on 16.2.25, 16.21.5. It's very detailed what that procedure is. Okay, and that's a separate and distinct problem than just trying to get routine information to the kids. I would highly recommend that we separate these issues, okay? And in addition, I would comment is that I don't want, and I agree with Bob here, is that I don't want anything, okay, or anyone to be interrogated, okay, without a written justification for the interrogation and what was said, a written report. I think that something like that should be documented if that's that important for the record, and that we should have that for history.
I make a motion that we table the policy committee.
Second. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda, folks. So I'm looking for
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That's the end of our March 11th, 2014 meeting.